What's the worst physical pain you've ever experienced? Run over by a truck. 19 broken bones, punctured lung and concussion were the major immediate injuries. It actually did not hurt at first, not even the first hour or two while the first responders were opening the car with the jaws of life. I passed out from lack of oxygen during extraction, thankfully, but the morphine dose was not correct, or I did not process it normally, and I overdosed and went into respiratory arrest. The pain was so severe my son-in-law told me he could hear me screaming when he got off the elevator. They put me in a medically induced coma for several days. I was on 3 diff pain meds for 6 months, and the first 4 months were pure heck, never-ending pain, only dulled. I cracked a rib and had a chest infection while also having whooping cough, easily the worst time of my life. Infection in right testicle. Had to wait enough for the doctor for about 1 hour. In that time sitting on a wooden bench made it swell up to the size of my fist. At the end the pain was so intolerable that I started to black out. Once I was called in examined by a doctor came in the senior doctor. "Is this the one that hurts?" he said while squeezing it. "No tears, nothing." The pain was something I have never felt. I could only stare blankly and not say a word nor move. Each time remembering that moment my balls shiver. Appendicitis. In the middle of finals. Went from "ooh my stomach feels weird" to "oh if this doesn't feel better when I am done with my practice test I am going to the doctor too." I can't even rockus enough to read. Better walk over now too. I can barely walk up the stairs at the health clinic. Was in surgery that night. When I had a kidney stone. Intense, sharp pains in my right side and back. All I could do was curl up in fetal position. Endometriosis. What's worse is that the pain changes every month or so I never know what to expect. Burning pain in my pelvis. I'll walk like I'm 94 a day. Stabbing pain in my left ovary. Curl up for a few hours and hope that people think I'm passing a kidney stone. And what's even worse is that people think it's regular PMS. I was on my bike and hit my van in 2003. Long story short, a mass was found in my lung that needed to be removed. After the surgery to cut into my lung and remove a piece of it, I was put in the recovery room. I remember slowly waking up, and then the pain started, and got worse, and worse, and I was hitting the morphine button frantically, but it just kept getting worse. The nurse forgot to hook up my morphine drip, so I got to experience the full pain of the surgery. I was 10, I think. I was prone to ear infections. We were going to come home from a vacation at my grandparents' house. I told my mom my ear hurt, and she didn't believe me. She thought I was lying so we could stay longer. A few days later, the ear infection was bad enough that my jaw was swollen and sore. I couldn't chew because my jaw hurt so much from my ear infection. She believed me then, but that was the day we were leaving. So there was nothing to do until we got home. I later found out I had an ear infection in both ears, but I didn't feel the second one because the first one was a lot worse. I spent 5 hours on an airplane that day. Hyperextended my left knee one afternoon playing volleyball at a party on wet grass. Walked it off, went home, took some aspirin and went to bed. The next morning, sunshine. Birds were chirping. I sat up in bed, pivoted, and then put weight on my left leg. A flash of white blew up my field of vision and I cried out in pain. I ended up wearing a knee brace for around 6 weeks afterwards. I have something called trigeminal neuralgia. It is apparently the most excruciating chronic medical condition humans can have. The attacks are on the same pain level as your face literally being on fire. So if something touches my face wrong, or I accidentally chew on the bad side of my mouth, or I get too cold, or sometimes for absolutely no reason, I get to have one of those lovely face fire attacks. It's called the suicide disease, and I get it. During a particularly bad episode, I ended up screaming at my husband to kill me. In 2007 I developed an ingrown hair on my taint. It got some weird bacterial infection. It got so bad. I came home after a dinner date and sat down. I thought to myself, yep, we're going to the hospital. Figured it was something antibiotics could take care of. At the the doctor called in a urologist to look at my gooch. He came in, took a peek and said, "Hope you didn't have anything planned for the next few days. You have surgery in about an hour." Went to surgery, awoke with an incision from my gonch. up the right side of my balls, and stopping just to the right of my dong. Also there was a drainage tube sewn up in there. I spent a week in the hospital battling sepsis and cellulitis. I was discharged and told that the wound would heal very slowly and I'd have to pack the wound with fresh gauze every night. Here comes the pain part. So I didn't really have a good angle to be able to pack it myself. I was single and living alone and I didn't have anyone to help. So I convinced my mom to help out. I covered my cash and prices and she helped pack the wound. One night, she couldn't help. I had to try to do it myself. So, I tried to pack it myself, and I tore the wound open. All I remember is searing horrible pain before passing out. I woke up 2 hours later. I was crying and laying in a pool of my own blood. That was crappy. My urethral opening was too small and contributing to kidney infection, so they made it bigger and put in evaporating stitches. The first time peeing after this was the most excruciating experience of my life. The pain slowly got better with each urination, but the first few days were heck. I have a disease where my immune system attacks my organs. Long story short, all my skin burned off. Looked like 2nd and 3rd degree burns on every single part of my body. During this, a few of my organs weren't working, so I had to get a colonoscopy and it only goes more downhill from there. So imagine this. 15-year-old girl, 20 now, all skin peeling, burning, blistering, and falling off. Feet, butt, and booty hole included. And I gotta drink the colonoscopy prep that basically makes you crap all day until it's all out. I've got no skin on my feel and butt. You gotta run to the bathroom, go, wipe, go back, all while hooked up to about 20 machines. It was a jolly ole time. About 2 years ago, I was in a nearly fatal car accident. A girl hit my car head on at 55 miles per hour after she crossed the center line. I was knocked unconscious upon impact, but even though my seatbelt was fastened, I was thrown into the passenger's seat. I woke up with my knee lodged underneath the dashboard. I was stuck. For some reason, the paramedic responsible for getting me out of the vehicle thought the best course of action was to yank my leg out from underneath the dashboard. I went from having a broken patella to having a shattered patella. The worst part? I didn't freaking pass out, so I felt all of it. I went to the pre-trial. I was subpoenaed of the girl who hit me. When she recounted what happened, she told the judge that she still hears my blood-curdling scream in her dreams. My surgeon said, in his 38 years of practice, he had never seen any bone break so devastating. The pain was bad enough for me to not feel my broken nose, cheekbones, wrist, and elbow. Like I had no idea I had any other fractures until I read my hospital discharge papers. 4 surgeries later and I'm left with a gnarly keloid scar. Needless to say, my lawsuit is ongoing. I had a perirectal abscess. It's an infection that starts in your rectum and come out of your butt cheek. That in itself was painful. More painful than tearing my ACL. Now the worst physical pain was getting it drained. They had to stick it with a small amount of Novocaine. Prior to lancing it, the Novocaine injection was the worst pain I have ever felt. It literally felt like they were injecting hot lava into my already ridiculously painful abscess. Apparently what came out was a bloody milkshake. And there was a lot of it according to the doctor. I actually had to get this done 2x prior to getting the surgery for the permanent fix. I have to say, I don't wish that pain upon my worst enemy. Gallbladder attack, gallstones attack. It came on slowly and wasn't that bad, but it just wouldn't stop. After an hour I kept saying if I could get a second to take a breath without pain, I'd be okay. Fortunately it ended after 4 hours and 2 weeks later the sucker was gone. Root canal. Not enough lidocaine. As soon as I hit the root with the drill, I can only describe it as white pain took over my entire being. I couldn't react and it felt like time stopped. It was only a fraction of a second. Luckily, the dentist realized it from my body flinching, I guess. Besides that, a migraine in the back of my head after certain recreational partner activities, completely pounding, sharp, and destructive, lasted 4 hours. Vicodin did nothing. Circumcision. When I was 6'8", my mom decided to do that against my dad's wishes. She took me on a vacation and decided that it'd be a good time to get my dong snipped. I had the pleasure of a 2-day operation without anesthetic. 1-day procedure took longer due to the fact that I fought and struggled through it, where no less 8 people were holding me down. Then the joy of going back the 2nd day for a checkup that was them finishing the procedure. Never forgot the pain. Turns out Kenya's not the greatest place to get a circumcision. My aorta ripped. It felt a lot like I just had someone stabbing me in the chest. I've broken bones. I've had chemical burns. I've walked a 1/4 of a mile after fricking up my ankle bad enough that the doctor told me it would have been better to have broken it. None of those compare to the feeling I had. I was studying for a class, not doing anything strenuous, or so I thought, when I felt a sharp sudden pain in my upper chest. I called 911 and the ambulance came, took me to the hospital. The first doctor in there tried laughing it off, asked me how many Red Bulls I'd had that day. My family said that I told him to go frick himself. He left without doing a single actual diagnostic procedure. A cardiologist came by and listened to my heartbeat for maybe 3 beats before sending me get an MRI. Stat. The surgeon actually sat next to the MRI tech, looking at the readouts. They didn't actually finish the procedure. They wheeled me straight to the OR. Turns out, I had what was called an aortic dissection, going from the aortic valve, the valve that leads from the heart out to the aorta, and into the abdominal portion of my descending aorta. An aortic dissection is when the layers of your aorta start to tear. The aorta has 3 layers. I'll skip the fancy names. Inner, middle, and outer. My inner and middle layers completely tore themselves apart. The only thing keeping me alive was that one layer that stuck it out. I spent a literal week in the hospital, 167 hours to be precise, from admittance to discharge. Had an emergency C-section with a botched epidural. Felt everything. I can't describe the pain of a scalpel cutting into me and the deep pull as they yanked my son out of my womb. Kept from passing out of pure willpower to see if my boy was okay. He was. I saw him, heard him cry, and promptly passed out. Calciphylaxis wounds. Doctors told me that they are pretty much the same thing as 3rd-degree deep tissue burns. They ran on the inside of my thighs from my groin to my knees. I had to go to the OR twice a week to be put under anesthesia just to change the bandages. DRs rate the pain as 10 out of 10. And as a bonus I had kidney stones and pancreatitis during the whole mess. Fun times all around. A kidney stone in my left ureter so big, I needed surgery to remove it. I learned to love Dilaudid. I've had kidney stones and ear infections. Cluster headaches are the objectively correct answer to this thread. I'll try to describe the pain but want to make clear that nothing I write will come even close to the actual experience. If you have kidney stones, your brain can locate the pain. It is the organ processing it, but it's not affected in its functionality. You can rationalize that the pain will stop, what it is and what you can and can't do. You remain you. Cluster headaches are different. Your brain is affected directly and doesn't know how to handle it, so it goes into panic mode and reacts with an endless feedback loop of agony. Everything else completely shuts down. You can't see, you cannot think, and that's not hyperbolic. Your whole existence, that what you think of as you, is reduced to the maximum amount of pain that, again, you as an existence can imagine, plus the feeling of impending doom. You don't register that it is temporary, you don't even recognize what time is, and you want to die. Your only goal is for this to stop, and the only way you can influence that is through death. There is a reason they are called suicide headaches. Then, after it's stopped, it stays with you, not the pain that subsides, but the sense of you and what it can be reduced to. It's almost philosophical, and the fear of it happening again. I am at the brink of tears even writing about it. My ribcage bouncing off my heart. The nurse in the ER who stabbed me in the butt with a load of painkillers will always remain an angel of mercy in my few memories of the incident. The injury happened during a game of American football. I was lined up as a wide receiver, wide right of the formation. I ran a route that started as a straight 7-9 yard bolt down the line, followed by a diagonal cut inside the cornerback covering me, towards the opposite corner of the end zone. I beat my coverage and had a clear lane to the end zone. Made eye contact with my QB and he threw a pass towards the end zone. Unfortunately the pass was slightly short, or I was slightly too fast, arriving in the end zone slightly behind me and low, totally uncatchable. I slowed, extending my arm to reach back to successfully slap the ball down before the cornerback I'd just outrun intercepted the ball. As I was extended, the safety and a linebacker made every attempt to connect their shoulders together, with me in the middle. One hit my chest, below my collarbone. The other connected with my shoulder blade on the same side, with enough force to cause the injury. Cue pain, then worse pain, and then a trip to the ER with the previously mentioned needle of mercy to the buttock. It's still a vivid memory, partly because of the pain at the time but partly because of the lasting damage. Even a decade later I would wince in pain every time I laughed, coughed or sneezed, especially the sneezes, and surprisingly people looked worriedly at a person clutching their chest in pain. I found telling the tale helped keep people from calling emergency services to report a heart attack. Gut, frick, that. Vasectomy before it was completely numb. Broken wrist and finger had me crying like a baby. I was only 10 at the time though. When I broke my femur playing hockey, I've never felt anything even close to that since then. 2 tibial osteotomies. Basically a surgeon cuts your tibia almost all the way through in order to reposition the tibia and correct knee alignment. They make you walk the next day with a walker. I almost fainted after 3 steps. To continue the nightmare, I had to do something called bone distraction. As your bone starts to heal, you turn a screw that pulls the pieces apart so that your bone heals in a new position. Distraction is done every day for about 2 weeks. Naturally, all of this involves epidural nerve blocks, sedatives, and tons of hydromorphone and oxycodone. Ovarian torsion. Regardless of whether you're male or female, having a gonad twist on itself is excruciating. The fellas can at least reach and adjust that problem themselves. Women have no such luck. It took 5 days and 3 hospital visits to get a correct diagnosis. By that time it had long since lost its blood supply and was dead. Major emergency surgery to get it out before it ruptured. Afterward the surgeon explained that my ovary had gone through 3 complete rotations. That was exactly as painful as it seems. Or to state this another way, with ovarian torsion as a 10 on one's 1 to 10 pain scale. Several years later when a finger got broken so severely it nearly severed that rated a 7 by comparison. I had no idea that this could happen. Fell down a flight of stairs and probably broke my tailbone. I'm stubborn and dumb and didn't see a doctor. The following year was absolute agony every time I sat down, stood up, had intercourse, moved wrong etc. YTF didn't you see a doctor? Canker sores on the uvula. Feel pulsating pain every time I breathe and the air dries it up, making it even more irritating. Swallowing is excruciating, especially food, and if a piece of food gets stuck there, you start considering starvation for a while. So here is my tale. It's a dark tale, not necessarily a black tale, more of a dark brown and crimson red. Back in the day I was a swimmer you see, practicing swimming twice a day for a total of 5 hours. I had a great diet. I ate about 6,000 calories a day, and I love diet soda. Well, 1 week of practice was dubbed Heck Week. We practiced a total of 6 hours and it was very intense training. Well, young me thought water and fiber were a mythical thing, not really that important, until during Heck Week. I didn't poop for 3 days. Eating like a swine and practicing multiple times a day had made my intestines extract every bit of water from my poop. I really didn't notice until the 2nd day. My stomach hurt a bit. Then came day 3. I had a cup of coffee after practice to wake myself for my classes. What followed was the single most horrific thing I've ever accomplished. I took a crap. Not just any ordinary crap though. A triple flusher. The first breach was a solid 6 minutes of me pushing out a log that was so dry and bumpy I was in tears. That turd alone clogged the toilet and required me to move to the next stall to finish my quest. The second was a rapid fire of pebbles, marbles, and the occasional ping pong ball which clogged me and required me to use the handicap stall grips to push out the dastardly anus plug. I was sweating a cursing up a storm. The third bowl filler was what I would describe as beer shoots on roids. Nothing but acidic slimy butt-chowder spewed from my body, covering the bowl entirely, even some out the back end on the tank. The issue is, I had torn my butt on the first crap. I had been crapping blood during all of this. I had to call my school dean to ask for a nurse to help me. My butt would not stop bleeding. Afterwards I had surgery to correct an anal fissure. This surgery happened 6 months later. The entirety of this 6 months I was given opioid-based painkillers to dull the pain of my butt, which constipated me more and made my defecation even worse. One specific crap I blacked out from pain. That's when I demanded the surgery. Afterwards I kicked a wonderful opiate addiction at 17. The entire thing caused my pain tolerance to skyrocket. For those that are wondering what it's like to tear your butthole, let's just say it like crapping out a baseball covered in barbed wire that's soaked in pepper juice, and due to constipation causes that first initial crap to last on average 3 minutes. 3 minutes of nerve-killing horror, followed by butt blood. Lots of butt blood. I got dry sockets on both sides after having my wisdom teeth removed, and it was terrible and lasted for days. Lumbar puncture. They have you sit and hunch over and tell you not to move, give you shots to numb, and then stick that sucker in there. Nope. I don't know how far she got that thing in me, but I freaking screamed and they had to hold me down so I wouldn't move and paralyze myself. I'm thinking the local anesthesia missed the spot or something. Frick that. They wanted to put me under to do it and I said frick that, I'm out. Also, getting stitches in the bottom of your foot doesn't feel too great. Screamed for that one too. Cluster headache. It was intense shortness of breath, auras, spots of vision loss, followed by the worst possible pain I have ever felt, like nails growing inside my head. Three-way tie, kidney stone. Similar to what others have mentioned, I was curled up laying on the floor until I could get into the hospital. Broken tooth. I had a filling fall out, then part of the tooth adjacent to that broke and the sharp edge was digging into the nerve. I was up all night in excruciating pain, like an electric shock through my whole head, until I could get to an emergency dentist the next morning. Broken toe. I broke my toe by dropping a large metal container on it. At first it just kinda hurt, but over the next couple of days as the swelling set in it became almost unbearable. Ghost pains of shingles. Like a week after the rash had cleared, my skin would periodically feel like it was set on fire and wouldn't stop for up to an hour at a time. Labor. Freaking labor. 32 hours of it, and it took forever for my cervix to dilate enough to get the epidural, and they used Pitocin to induce it, due to the cord being wrapped around my daughter's neck twice, so it was extra painful. Honestly, probably last year, I was going through a treatment that made my white blood cell count drop. I don't fully understand the numbers, but the lowest I recall them spouting off was 05, whatever that means. So they gave me a shot to boost my immune system. They told me I'd be in severe pain for a few days. I thought I could tough it out. I was wrong. It simulated the bone marrow in my hips and lower back. The pain made me basically collapse. Couldn't breathe. Brought tears to my eyes, etc. Apparently, it's what a woman feels when she's giving birth. The doctor told me it's rated at an 8/10 on a pain scale right underneath bear attack lol. So yeah, 2-3 days worth of contractions essentially, every 2 weeks, for 6 months. Probably having a foreign object inserted into my uterus through my cervix. I imagine that is the first inkling of what childbirth would feel like. Ever had sticks in your eyeball? To pull the lens tight to flatten out the creases made from bad LASIK? I have. Nothing else even comes close. Weeks of scratching every time you blink. I can see out of the eye, but still need glasses. Yay. All that for next to nothing. 7 years ago I went into renal failure. That, by far, was the worst pain I've ever experienced. It felt like midgets were squeezing my kidneys with each movement that I'm at. Tear gas. I was standing on some stairs to a building during a protest when the cops suddenly threw a tear gas grenade that landed right by the stairs. I had to run right through it to get away. Felt like having razors shoved into my eyes, throat, and nose. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.